Welcome back to my channel at The Movie Optimist, where I try and find the silver linings in even the worst of films. I just got done watching the movie The Mummy by Cronin. For those of you who don't know that guy, he's an up-and-coming director, and he did just do the movie Evil Dead Rise, and this movie feels tonally exactly like that movie. Essentially, in this film, a family is located out in Cairo because the father is like a TV reporter that has to go there temporarily, and while the mom's also at work, he is tasked with watching his kids, and one of them goes missing. They try finding her, but after a couple years, they kind of give up and they relocate to New Mexico to take on a new job for the father so he can continue paying the bills, even though they're grieving the loss of their daughter. Well, 8 years later, she resurfaces, the local police find her buried inside of a sarcophagus, and she's still alive, and they alert the parents to come pick her up and bring her home and try and rehabilitate her there, and that they should be happy that she's found. However, upon bringing the little girl home, they learn that there's something wrong with her when she starts attacking everybody and peeling the skin off of her bones. Like I said before, if you liked Evil Dead Rise, this movie definitely has that same kind of sensibility where it's really mean and the possessed people are just really cruel and say awful things to people and try and get under their skin by insulting them. It also plays a lot more like an Exorcist movie than a Mummy movie. If you're thinking of The Mummy, you're probably thinking of the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, which were really popular in the early 2000s, or maybe even the Tom Cruise Mummy movie that not a lot of people liked. I thought it was a good action flick, not a great horror flick, but a lot of people didn't like that movie. This isn't really a mummy movie. The only thing that this movie has in relation to mummies is a sarcophagus. Essentially, in the Exorcist movies, when a little girl gets possessed by a demon, a priest comes to exorcise the demon out of the little girl with prayer. In this movie, a little girl gets possessed by a demon, and the solution is to wrap them in this cloth that has these ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics on it that's almost like a prayer in and of itself, that's meant to keep the evil spirit inside the vessel or the human that they use to put the demon in, and then bury them in the sarcophagus, chain it up, and put them in a basement somewhere out in Egypt. That's really the only relation to anything mummy related that you've seen before. Everything else plays like an exorcism movie. Once this little girl gets out of the sarcophagus, she starts acting like a creature that you would see in the Evil Dead, where, like I said before, she's insulting people, she's ripping skin off of her bones, she's very violent, and I just couldn't help but think the whole time that this would have just been better called The Exorcist, or something involving an exorcism, because that's really the heart and soul of this film, is a demon possessing this little girl. That being said, I think your enjoyment of this movie is going to vary based on your mileage of body horror, because look, at the end of the day, this movie is 90% body horror. There are some jump scares and there are some tense moments where the parents are chasing this little girl through like crawl spaces within the walls of their house, and you hear footsteps like running all around them and you don't know where it's coming, and there are tense moments like that, but really, this movie is disgusting. I felt absolutely violated watching this movie, and it attacked my senses, turning it from a 10 to an 11. Now, I'm a little desensitized to body horror movies because of the Terrifier films. They are so overtly gross and disgusting that seeing something a little bit more watered down, like a big budget Hollywood movie, is a little bit more palpable to me, but it's still one of the more intense R-rated big budget Hollywood films I've ever seen in terms of the body horror. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a scene where, you know when you're like biting your cuticles and you grab a piece and you pull a little too hard and it rips like a deep chunk out and then it burns really bad? They do that in this movie times a million in a different spot other than their finger, and it is disgusting. My entire theater gasped, and I even heard a woman next to me gagging. I don't think I've ever heard that in a Hollywood level movie. This movie is brutal against both children, women, and men, yes, but honestly, the men have it the best in this movie. Women and children got it the worst. They were thrown around, ripped apart, skin peeling off their flesh, teeth getting ripped out of their face. It was pretty brutal and pretty hard to watch, and I would imagine some of the parents in the theater, I'm not a parent myself, but some of the parents in the theater were squirming a lot more, envisioning like their own kids while this was happening. And like I said, it's really hard hitting, and if that's not something you're into, if you don't like body horror, stay the fuck away from this movie, because it is body horror galore. Now, I did really enjoy this movie. I always love movies about parents trying to rescue their kids. I thought all the performances in this movie were fantastic, mainly from the little girl playing the main possessed girl. She was excellent. And Jack Reynor, I haven't seen him in a big budget movie probably since the Transformers movie Extinction, I believe it was, that he was in with Mark Wahlberg. He's great in this movie as a father just trying to save the soul of his daughter. But this movie isn't perfect. It is riddled with things happening that absolutely blow my effing mind. One of them being, there are constantly things that happen and then you don't see the ramifications of it, and And you could chalk it up to like, you don't need to see it. You could let your imagination paint the picture for you. But in a lot of ways, it just felt really lazy to me. For an example, there's a scene where one of the siblings of this possessed little girl starts to get like levitated by this demonic sibling, and she starts getting really manhandled, and then it cuts to the next day and you never see the ramifications of like what she actually did to that little girl. It kind of just does away with it. Other scenes, like there's a person that gets thrown out of a window and killed in this movie, and the cops are never called. It's never investigated. Like they never explain like, what did this family tell people that witnessed this woman get thrown out of a window and fall to her death? Like they just don't elaborate on that. There's a scene at a funeral where the possessed little girl starts wreaking havoc in front of like 50 people attending the funeral, and then it cuts to that following night where they're learning more about what's happening to their daughter, and it's just like, what happened to all those people that were there? How are the cops not there right now putting this little girl in a straitjacket? Like it just, like things like that. Like if I was part of that funeral and I saw this little girl crawl out of a hole in the ceiling, drop down and start ripping flesh from people, I would leave and call the cops, and the cops would come and put that kid in a straitjacket and carry her off to an insane asylum. But not in this movie. And it's just things like that. Things like that happen, and then there's no explanation to why everyone just moseys on about their day like nothing even happened. So in that aspect, it feels a little lazy. And then the next thing kind of couples with that, this movie is almost 2 hours and 15 minutes long. If you're gonna make a horror movie that long, you better at least take the time to explain things like this. But instead they fill it with things that kind of just drag. The last 45 minutes of this movie is fantastic if you love really intense horror. But the first hour and like 15 minutes, there's creepy things that happens that are sprinkled throughout, but they're few and far between. And a lot of the times it's just this family sitting in dark rooms staring at her, like trying to rationalize in their head what's going on with her. And it'll drag on for like 10 minutes sometimes. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, you could have easily shaved 20 to 25 to 30 minutes out of this movie, and it would have been exactly the same. It would have had a better pace and it would have flowed better, and I wouldn't have found myself checking my phone throughout the middle of this film. And then my last big gripe with it is something that a lot of horror movies fall into this trap, and that's that characters are dumb. They're just dumb. And people could make the argument, oh, it's the mother, of course she's gonna be kind of blinded to it, so it's kind of forgiven. No, there's no world where anyone would forgive the things that this little girl is doing. Like, this little girl is assaulting family members. She's levitating out of her bed, essentially. She's speaking in a different language. She's peeling the skin off of her bones, and like, I'm talking like down to the bone. She's gnawing at her lips. She's headbutting people. She's crawling through crawl spaces and eating bugs that she finds in the attic. And Jack Rayner, the father, at a certain point was like, we gotta get this fucking kid out of here and put her somewhere until we can figure out what's going on in a place that's more suited to contain her and like restrain her. And the mom's like, you don't think I could take care of my daughter here? It's like, no, she just killed somebody, assaulted another person, and she's literally ripping the flesh off her bones. You've done nothing to stop her from doing any of this. What do you mean? And it's like, they try and make you feel bad that the mom's just so happy to have her back, but it's like, nobody in this situation would just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna turn a blind eye to her assaulting everybody and ripping the skin off of her bones and attempting to kill people. Like, that just wouldn't happen. And it really just makes the writing feel a little lazy in that aspect. But outside of those three things, I did enjoy this movie. I do like body horror movies, and I do like when these demonic people talk shit to people. Like, it's a lot of fun. And I do like a story about a family just trying to save the soul of their kid from this entity. It's a lot of fun in that aspect. And although it drags a little bit, when it gets to the last 45 minutes, it felt very fulfilling. Like, the ending was really satisfying. There's sacrifices, and then there's resolutions to the sacrifices that happened at the very end. And I was really happy that they put that in there, because it's not often that movies get resolutions to things like this. I don't want to spoil it, but you know what I mean if you watch this movie and you see the final 5 minutes of it. At the end of the day, I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. If you're a fan of the Mummy movies, I don't know if you're going to like this movie, because it's not really a Mummy movie. If you're a fan of the Exorcist movies, I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you could turn your brain off to the fact that there's stupid decisions made by the core family members, the movie drags on a little bit, and a couple other little logic problems that I talked about before. If nothing else, I'm excited to see what Jack Rayner does next, because this movie showed me that he is, in fact, an incredible leading man actor, and I just really want to see where his career goes. It also has me excited to see what Lee Cronin does next, because he feels like a really unique voice in the world of horror. He feels like the next true Sam Raimi. I think James Wan is probably the king of horror right now, with creating his universe like the Conjuring films and the Insidious films, and James Wan is great at tension type types of horror, but it does feel more in line with how most horror is, whereas in Lee Cronin feels more like this unique voice like Sam Raimi with his camera angles, and the way he makes his characters interact with each other, it feels very Sam Raimi-y, which makes sense because he did an Evil Dead movie that was made by Sam Raimi. Anyway guys, what say you? Has my review swayed your opinion on whether or not you want to see it? I would love to talk about it in the comments down below, and as always guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you next time.